Hey, we're back again. I'm glad you guys keep coming back to the watering hole. I like teaching you guys stuff. If anything should come from my abuse, definitely to teach other people how to avoid it. Um, and this week's episode of the Cointelpro 2.0 podcast isn't. I wasn't gonna really. I didn't know what I was gonna do, but then I was getting harassed by this person, and they were pattern breaking me, etc. And that all sounds like silly talk if you don't know what the fuck it is, or if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I mean, like I said, there's a lot of behavioral science in this, and I think maybe I should start talking more about some of the behavioral science stuff because, like, the stuff that being in this program, there's a lot of behavioral science to put you in catch 22s, to puppet you, to um, put you in a compromising situation, put you in danger. And a lot of people just behavioral science feels like it's not science, like it's not real. It seems like, kind of like a pseudoscience or something marketers believe in, and not, but it's real science. It's literally behavioral science. It's the human psyche and the urges and how we process information, etc., has already been figured out. And you know that's because governments understand if they can control behavior, they can weaponize it. They could subdue a population. They could confuse a population. They could make the population act in not their own best interest. They can put them in a panic mode and make them, you know, ask leadership for a way out, and they already had a plan, kind of thing. So, the human brain and behavior, etc., has already been figured out. It's already been hacked. And it seems like magic to anybody who doesn't understand what the fuck is going on. But we're going to talk about it, and perhaps maybe we'll do a couple more episodes on it. But I've done over like 70 hours of content, and sometimes I forget if I've talked about something or not. And um, I haven't talked about pattern breaking and percolation, percolation. Like percolate, like bubbles rising to the surface. So, we're going to talk about that and get more into the behavioral science because it all sounds like witchcraft bullshit, but it's literally called behavioral science. And, people need to understand the human psyche has already been hacked. It's just been hacked. It might seem like you're in control of your impulses or from being uh, given disinformation. That's why they have things called cognitive dissonance, where it's like you refuse to believe new information because it conflicts something you've been told already. I mean, there's just all these things, and behavioral science shouldn't be taken lightly because that's part of the touchless assault. Is the cycle is enhanced torture, and this kind of gets into enhanced torture techniques. I can call it behavioral science, but what you really want to hear is, oh, this is an enhanced torture technique because that sounds sexy, you know. But enhanced torture techniques are all based on behavioral science. That's why there's this great quote in the Zero Dark 30 movie, if you've seen it, where they're at Guantanamo and they're interrogating this guy, and one of I think it's an army ranger or what have you, and there's this guy and he's chained up, and they're waterboarding him, they're playing all this music, they're sleep depriving him, they're making him cold, they're making him hot, and then this guy isn't talking. So what they say to him is like, you know, this is, you're fighting science. And basically that's because the US government knows how to hijack behavior, how to get people to do things, how to get people to act in a certain way, how to put them in a place that they need to be at a certain time without them knowing or without them realizing it, etc. Because the subconscious has been hacked, the conscious has been hacked, your impulses have been hacked. It's just a perfect system. And This stuff isn't talked about a lot. Maybe some marketers understand some more of the advanced techniques because, marketing and advertising is what fuels the commerce because it, gets people to buy shit, what have you. But the U.S. government really has weaponized quite a bit of this. And I guess the weaponization of it is enhanced torture. Some people call it enhanced interrogation, but enhanced interrogation. That term came about um, because it's illegal to want to torture people. You understand? And that term came about when we started bringing people to Guantanamo Bay, etc. And if you know anything about the history, I'm going to go on a little rant before we talk about this shit. So, just because I feel like it's a nice little nugget to put in your fucking brain. So if the topic ever comes up, you have, maybe a more educated understanding. So just put up with it. But Guantanamo Bay, considering how much quality information came out of there, but it continued to be used, etc. Most likely was used for more so of honing in um, and enhanced torture techniques. They call it interrogation because they have to have a the government had to have a like a white horse, or like we're doing this to fight terrorism, so we're interrogating them. That's what it is. It's enhanced interrogation. But enhanced interrogation seems like you're getting something, and believe it or not, they didn't get really any quality information. I mean, I cannot think of off the top of my head. Maybe there's some obscure story that maybe helped validify continuing of funding of Guantanamo, but not good intel didn't come out of that. Basically, what I'm thinking is that was a training camp for high-ranking intelligence, special ops, etc., to hone in their skills on enhanced torture techniques. Do you understand? Um, because it's important to know how to fight your enemy, what makes them tick, etc. And I don't think perhaps we had a good manifest of people from the Middle East, etc. But at the same time, it's like fresh bodies. People can go there, they can train, they can learn how things are done, what have you. So if you really want to think about it, I would see, considering that not a lot of quality information came out of there, it was less about interrogation and more about training other intel and high-ranking military special ops people how to do this enhanced torture than anything else, considering just the poor quality of information that came from there. So if you hear the word enhanced interrogation, that was a term thrown around after the Bush administration started throwing a bunch of Middle Eastern people over there because, oh, well, we're interrogating. That means they have information, because language shapes thought. So if you create a term like enhanced interrogation, it seems like, oh, well, they got to do that for our safety or the terrorists win. But in reality, that probably was more akin to an experimentation camp and training camp for intelligence operatives. And considering that the media had such a prolific enemy image being programmed on the American people, as long as you gave it like a title, like "we're doing this for your safety" sort of thing, I would say Congress, etc., was putting up with it more than it was. But in reality, they really were teaching enhanced torture techniques. Yeah. So it's just so you have an understanding of what's going on there. And also, it gives them an idea to kind of pick the brain of that particular type of culture, etc. So now they gain a library of certain things. They understand how far they can push someone, what'll make someone suicidal, what makes them embarrassed, what have you. And perhaps maybe they didn't have that on file. Who the fuck knows? But you really need to understand, why enhanced interrogation as a term, and you should more liken it to enhanced torture. Now, psychological torture is important, especially in Cointelpro, because it's like touchless assault, and the mind, your world is shaped by your mind. So if you know how to do enhanced torture, then you can create quite a terrifying situation without having to touch somebody. And that's good. So if you, in a mass surveillance society, because there's just cameras everywhere, and you don't want some of your intel guys getting caught doing shit, touching people, whatever, which is why radiation weapons are used, because you can't see them. The subject can just feel the effects of them. You can't hear them. You can't see them. They make no noise. You can't see them through the air or what have you. And psychological torture is you don't touch someone. You just put their mind in a box of fear. And those two strategies are used. Oh, poison is also kind of like a touchless assault, because they don't touch you, I'm saying, but you consume the thing, what have you. So understand that these are essential skills in the program, because they allow a high degree of control over your subject, over your target, while also maintaining the anonymity, or what does Intel love to use? What's that term? Plausible deniability. But it exists. It's a real science. It's not snake oil. It's not witchcraft. It's not voodoo. It's not bullshit. And the reason why it's not talked about a lot or taught or what have you is just because the same reason why I think they don't use a lot of it's the same reason why they don't use things like the active denial service weapon publicly, because once something goes out into the zeitgeist that it's possible, and what happens, and lots of people experience it, right? Since we learned about the 6 methods of persuasion, one of those is consensus. So once a lot of people, not thousands, but once like a couple hundred people start being like, oh my gosh, I got hit by this microwave thing, or I got hit with the radiation shit, what have you. I understood what was going on. I saw the weapon, or I saw the thing, whatever, and I purposely got hit by this because I was attacking the Capitol, or what have you. They won't shut up about it. And then, you really can't use that weapon for really key things. Like, in my case, they shot an active denial service weapon at me outside of the LA Times to scare me from going in, because they were afraid I was going to talk about things they didn't want me to speak about, even though I still went, and I kept driving to LA all the way from San Diego, experiencing some terrible shit, terrifying shit, each and every time, risking my health the entire time. Because there's just no getting through to me, unfortunately. I am that kind of asshole when it comes to something I think is right and should be done. That sounds like I'm jerking myself off. Maybe I was. Who knows? How's this? You learn stuff you don't know about yourself, especially when you go through this program. I didn't realize, after being lit on fire by the military science weapon in the middle of the city, that my response would be to keep going. I didn't know that personally, and I kind of surprised myself, because it is amazingly painful. But going back, that's why they don't use those sorts of weapons. They have them. Like, they should have used that shit, that like active denial service weapon. Basically, it's a fucking microwave that they used on me. But they should have used that, and they have them in Washington, D.C. They have them. They had news reports about using them. Lockheed Martin sold, not Lockheed Martin, I think General Atomics sold a shit ton of them to go on top of tank turrets, like a compact version of it, which is what I'm pretty sure I was hit with, considering, there's the larger dish kind that goes on top of Humvees, I think are more prolific all over the internet. And there's these little box sizes, like the size of a mini fridge. But the reason why they don't use those things, even though they've had them for some years now, and most likely when the National Guard got called to the Capitol, considering the enormous risk to losing so many prominent people in Congress and the Senate while that was happening, and they still didn't use it, is most likely is because they understand that if there is a general consensus that these weapons exist and how they feel and how they hurt, and they use them on protesters regularly, etc., it will get people to start talking about and start to understand that there's other avenues like this radiation stuff I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are weapons you can't see, feel, whatever, that do horrible damage to the human body. And I think their usage is, they see it's more of a there's more quality. They're going to get more bang for their buck out of it by using it in strategic situations than in crowd situations. Unless it's absolutely desperate. I guarantee you they probably have a couple hidden around the White House, if anything. But they obviously don't give a shit about anybody at the Capitol. That's for fucking certain. But the same thing is with psychological torture or enhanced torture or what have you. Is, you know, a lot of these techniques, etc., it's not more mainstream. You don't hear a lot about them, etc., because, you know, this stuff is to be used in more strategic applications, like targeting somebody in Cointelpro. But these tactics do, in fact, trickle down to more regional targets, which is basically gang stalking victims. And there is a trickle down effect, especially if something's existed for so long. And, you know, Cointelpro's existed since the fucking 70s and the 80s, believe it or not. I'm sorry, since the 50s. In the 70s, the CIA and the FBI, because this was an FBI program. Like I said, I'm going to go on this rant. I have all this information. I've been drinking from the fire hose for so many years. Information dump. Just hear me out here. And we're going to get right to it after I finish these illustrations and little nuggets I want to put in your brain so you can think better. Because if you understand, here's the thing. You know, I got information to tell you guys about this program. And I understand, considering the numbers and how well it does more than our other podcasts that we're doing now. You know, people are really enjoying this. But if I don't teach you some history nuggets and how they think, you know what I'm saying, you won't learn how to think yourself. So when you see something, you know what I'm saying, when you see smoke, you understand fire is near. If you just see smoke and had no reference for fire ever in your life, you would just think like, you know, the black bubbles are coming from the dirt, you know, or, you know, from the hot thing. But if you never seen or experienced fire, you wouldn't understand there's a cause and effect. So if I teach you, you know, if I teach you to be able to identify smoke, then you'll start to be able to look for the fire. So that's where, I mean, I'm a little random. I go everywhere with all this shit, but believe me, I'm putting nuggets in your fucking brain that you can build on top of. But the FBI had the Cointelpro program. I keep repeating this, to basically oppress communists and Black Panthers. And, you know, that's why Cointelpro was used to target MLK and lots of Black Panther leaders, etc., as well as communists, because communism and the Communist Party and Black Panthers were kind of like, in some cases, they were BFFs, but they, you know, it was a real scare. They call it the Red Scare at the time. I'm trying to position this microphone. It keeps moving. Anywho, so the FBI had this program since the 50s. And then the CIA was like, hey, we see what you're doing over here around the 70s. They said, hey, we like what you're doing here. You mind if we get involved? And so the CIA got involved, and then they started, you know, using drugs and doing psychological torture and enhanced torture, and then pairing up things that they learned from MK Ultra and stuff like that into this program. And it became like really good in the 70s. And then I think around the 80s or late 70s, supposedly they closed the program down. But since the whole terrorism scare and all that other shit that happened from 9/11, it gave it a resurgence, and now we have this Cointel 2.0. Anyways, and that's not my name, by the way. That's just when I was looking for what was going on, what this program was, whatever, because I understood there was government employees involved in my abuse. Once I understood that, once I went to like the FBI and they told me to, let them fuck me or they'd fuck me harder, essentially. Then I was like, oh man, this isn't like a local phenomenon. This is a bigger deal. And when I was searching, then I found quite a few journalists, etc. They're calling it Cointelpro 2.0. So it's not my name. So I understand some people have asked me, how did I find that name? What have you? That's because there have been journalists that have kind of touched on the subject a little bit, but unfortunately, they kind of stopped at like, a 500-word story or whatever, with like a callback to when it was used during the civil rights era. But nothing as extensive as I've done. So unfortunately, I've kind of owned the term, but not intentionally, just because my library is so extensive. Anyway, so that's important to know that the CIA got involved. So, and then, we know what the CIA did with all the LSD stuff. And, they would give people LSD just to see how they would act, what have you. They did a lot of, and torture. They did a lot of enhanced torture while drugging people, etc. Understanding what drugs do what are the side effects, how that works with driving a person's behavior to do things, to not do things. That's where you get the whole Manchurian Candidate lore from. Yeah. But now, it's just even more crazy. It's now with the enhanced torture. It's even crazier. So we're going to learn about some of the enhanced torture techniques. One of them's going to, and this doesn't seem like torture so much as behavioral science, but I'm going to kind of touch on how the psychological science is used to harm the target, put them in catch-22s, make them go to places that they wouldn't normally go to, do things they wouldn't normally do, etc. And this touches on previous episodes too. That's why you got to listen to the whole library, so you have this body of knowledge. It has to do with priming, disinformation too. You can kind of pepper some of this shit in here, but go back to those episodes where I talk about that, and come back to this one. It'll make a whole lot more sense. Anyway, we're going to talk about pattern breaking and percolation. Just because it seems like fucking voodoo, but it works. It works on me a fuck ton. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure because, like I said, I'm reverse engineering the fucking UFO here. And this only happened because, two situations happened in my life. One was I had some locals. Well, first off, San Diego, where I live, I know I talked about this before, but not everyone listens to the episodes in line. They just kind of pick and choose what seems interesting. So I got to bring people up to speed. So I gotta say this for the whole class. But I've lived in San Diego my whole life. San Diego has the largest concentration of military personnel, military contractors in the nation. Considering we have the world's largest military, that says something pretty significant about San Diego and what kind of town it is. There's 3 major bases here. There's the Camp Pendleton base, there's the Miramar Air Force Base, and then there's the Coronado Navy base in the Bay of San Diego, which I think more people are more understanding. But there are 3 major bases. Camp Pendleton is fucking huge. You can drive for an hour in it, and you can still be in the base in one direction. And then there's the air base, as well as the naval base. So, the Navy runs shit here. They have their fingers in everything. They have their, since they've been here for over 100 years. The same way Detroit would be known as a city where automakers have a lot of pull, and they're involved in lots of, the civics, the city governments, etc., going on there because they have so much pull and they bring so much industry, what have you. That's the military, but here. So the military, they have their people planted in city government areas, etc., because they see the cities and suburbs around these 3 major bases in the county of San Diego. There's 3 regions of the county. There's North County, South County, and East County of San Diego. In the county of San Diego, they see the cities that surround those bases as layers of security. Do you understand? So there is peppered throughout the city. There is people who work for the government but maintain businesses or what have you, because it fills a gap. It allows them to keep an eye on people in the city, the goings on, people that move here. Are they a risk to base security, what have you? Um, it allows them to train people who, what do you call it? Field agents, intel field agents, etc. And considering the weather is here good year round, they can train people here year round. It's not like a seasonal thing. There's lots of different people here. It's a metropolis. It's really close to LA. It's close to San Diego, so they can understand how intel operations can learn how they're going to have to interact with uh, organized crime, because intel operations love interacting with organized crime. It's like a back and forth. I know it feels like a long explanation, but I think it's necessary to touch on these things, because sometimes when you need some money or what have you, intel operations, they need to be resourceful. They can't always get a check from the CIA and have it filtered through a bunch of bullshit and what have you, and then cash the check and then get the money. They need to learn how to interact with the underworld, etc. How to move drugs when they need a couple of $1,000s for an operation or whatever. Like all that shit is satisfied here in San Diego. On top of the fact that there's the most military personnel here, the most military contract personnel here. It's just this. It's a mecca. Think of it, if the Pentagon if the Pentagon had a city, you know what I'm saying, or created a city to make it look like a city on the outside to anybody driving through here or somebody that doesn't live here. But then the people in the city knew how shit really ran. It would be San Diego. So, this is, consider San Diego, Pentagon, California. And it's also the worst place to go under Cointelpro. What my issue is some people here were trying to extort me for some money. Unfortunately, my father passed. And a lot of these people, I lived growing up with them. Some of them are in the military space. Some are in the law enforcement space. They tried to shake me down. And at the same time, there was a third party keeping an eye on me, because in this military town, I live in this military town. And somehow I got on somebody's radar because I saw something. I saw something on the internet, and I believe it was a person trying to blow the whistle. And I don't think at that time pushing content viral or knowing how to do that was there yet. Web 2.0 was still like in its baby infancy. And that's kind of how I think, possibly. But I saw this thing, and then literally not too much longer after I saw it, I went back. I took a shower. I came back to it. It was already scraped off the internet. Yeah. But I went into detail about something fucked up that happened. This guy says he had information about what have you. He understood what was going on. Apparently, he had some sort of background in military and air traffic control. And like I said, I just saw this thing on the internet. He went off about this like weapon that springs shit open, but I didn't have a point of reference for it. I was just like, oh, that's really interesting. And at the time, I don't know if you understood about web rings or the fact that Google wasn't the Google and the internet sort of what it is now. Like, you would come across people just saying crazy shit, and you would just be like, oh, that was interesting. You would just kind of chalk it down to, because like, since I grew up in the internet age, I don't believe everything I see on the internet. But this third party was watching me while this local group was trying to rob me of some money they thought I was coming into. And while I was going through this, pretty much this shakedown, all of a sudden I said something because I was mad. I said something. I was like, man, I wonder if all this shit that I'm going through is about this weird thing I saw on the internet a long time ago. And I was in my house when I said this, in my house. And then I literally said something kind of out loud to myself about it, but it was like an inside joke, meaning like, an inside joke when you say like a random word and only if your good friends will laugh and understand what the fuck you're talking about. I was like talking like it was an inside joke between me and God, pretty much. So the other person in the room had no idea what the fuck I was talking about, because I was trying to keep it to myself, because what if this was about that? And unfortunately, there was a third party, somebody listening, and they absolutely knew what the fuck I was talking about. And literally by the next day, bro, like I was just in the shit. Like my life was just was just crazy bananas. And that's how I'm in the situation right now. Not because I'm special, not because, you know what I'm saying, I got the codes to the nukes or what have you. Just that series of events. That's all. That's all. Lots of people want to make this about a bunch of different things because, you know, this isn't this. This is there's people don't. A lot of people don't have a point of reference for this. So, you know, while I was going through this, a lot of disinformation was being spread about me because I truly was in denial. I was like, "There's no way," because I didn't think I was special. I didn't think that was true. What have you? But I made them. You know, I had to keep testing the waters. Had to keep poking the bear to see how angry they would get about certain things. I had to see what I was not allowed to talk about. I had to see what would make this new group of people who surrounded my life pretty much overnight, what made them angry, what made them abuse me, what have you. And, you know, it was obviously that shit. We have a micro documentary about it. You know, we had to essentially, kept trying to post videos about it on the internet once I was convinced, oh shit, it's this JFK Jr. shit. Once I literally poked the bear so many times where I'd end up in the fucking hospital, believe it or not. So it's like, oh, obviously, this is something they don't want me to talk about. There's this adage that um, bomber pilots share with each other, and they're saying, if you're taking fire, that means you're over the enemy, and that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good measure of what the fuck was going on. Like, I had to. It was through a lot of trial and error because they put a lot of disinformation out there. Granted, it allowed them to kind of try to ridicule me secretly, privately, pass a lot of rumors about me, deepfake media, etc. Out there to ruin my reputation before I really had a um, situational awareness about what was actually going on, and you know, kind of gave them a lead by a couple of years. Great, now you understand. I feel like I told the whole story there, but we're gonna get into pattern breaking and percolation. This is some of the enhanced torture techniques and that we're going to go over. It's based off behavioral science being key science. And on our Twitter page, we have two Twitter pages. I have Mesh News Room, MESH. News is spelled news, and then Room, or Mesh Megaphone, and that's like my chat account, or so I don't dirty up the the main account with bullshit, what have you. I just I interact with people, respond to all sorts of things there, and put up thoughts and stuff like that. Sometimes it's a nice little whiteboard for me to put up different thoughts so that I can come back and make a good podcast about it. So I'm going to put the links and the sources of that. I'm going to try to put in all the videos across all the platforms now that I'm understanding how this podcast distribution thing is working. And so you guys can reference actual psychological science documents, peer-reviewed papers backing all this shit up, because it's not worth my fucking time to tell you shit if it's not based on science or research or something. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not doing this to teach fucking voodoo, and there's no reason to learn anything if it's not true. So, pattern breaking and percolation. How far are we into this? 33 minutes? Man, I need to learn to shut up. Pattern disruption. It's got a few names. One of it is pattern disruption, which is more well known. There's unconscious cueing or communication sabotage. It's called by three general terms. So pattern disruption or communication sabotage triggers unconscious information in your brain, or an unconscious series of events or behaviors, etc. Now, it's entirely stimulus driven, meaning there needs to already be some sort of point of reference given to the target. And that could be negative or positive stimulus. And you can reinforce it or trigger it by creating a positive or negative stimulus. We're learning about positive and negative stimulus in the red squatting video. So if you want to learn about that, at least the core belief, the core knowledge base for that, I definitely recommend checking out the Red Squatting podcast in this series. Now, pattern breaking or communication sabotage can happen before an action. It's called the antecedent, during the action or an interruption, or after the action, known as the consequence. It usually must have the pattern already. The target must have the pattern already, or have the knowledge to perform the primed action that you wish them to transition to. That's why you break the pattern, is you're trying to make them transition to another behavior, what have you. So it must have the knowledge to perform the primed action, or else the pattern disruption, will not engage the target. It won't work. So knowing the target's behavior history is like really essential. Now, if you go back to the previous podcast episode, which was right before this one, called The List, I believe it's called The List, or it's about the list. These are shared. Your pattern disruptions, if you are a target of this, these are shared online. And I recommend you going to the List episode to check out how that's done, why other people you don't know it. It really enhances that feeling that they're everywhere, or getting people to think the Illuminati is after them. But yeah, knowing the target's behavior history is really essential. And tourists are known to experiment with you. If somebody puts on your list online in a group chat or whatever, they're going to be tourists about it. They're going to try to poke you, try to do things, try to experiment, because it's a novelty too. Not everyone is so engaged in it, but there are people who are pretty gung ho about your abuse. Sorry, is that too close to my ugly face? The microphone. But yeah, definitely check out the List episodes so you can understand how that is being passed around. Once they understand the target sequence, or let's say, every day you do a certain sequence of events, or if you start to do a certain action, like make a sandwich, then you always turn the radio on first, and then let the dogs in the house, and then you'll give them a piece of cheese or what have. Like, there's usually a pattern. People are patterns. You do something, and then you do something, and you do something. And usually the agents or contractors who are responsible for you, they will watch you for a considerable amount of time before they start to engage you, before you even have awareness that you are going to be a target or are a target of this. And they'll pay attention to quite a few of your patterns. And then after, they move you down Maslow's pyramid, and you should definitely check out that episode about Maslow's pyramid so you know what the hell I'm talking about. Usually they have many means of watching you and absorbing more patterns, to learn more patterns, etc. So knowing the target's behavior history is really important. So once you understand the target's sequence or track record, you know what's going to trigger what's going to trigger their next, what's going to trigger them to transition from whatever they're doing into the thing you would like them to start doing. And usually they're subconscious. Now, this transition to another behavior you weren't already doing, let's say you're in the middle of, talking to someone. What happens is usually, if it's not an agent, it'll be one of those hacky tourists, or those, concerned citizen, people that get involved in your abuse because they don't have a social life. They can't afford a PlayStation. Their wife doesn't touch their dick anymore. Whatever reason why these, grown adult losers will just participate in your bullshit. Usually they'll turn your abuse into what's known as, what's the term for that? I want to give you the right term. A holy war. So they will start a bunch of rumors in your community that you're a danger to them, they're a danger to the community, or you're everything that you're something that a large group of people will will not like. So they'll usually make it about kids or family, or, you know what I'm saying, that you like stole money from old ladies, like whatever's going to demonize you. And that's what they'll use to get people who aren't agents, people who aren't being paid to fuck with you, to also do these sorts of things. So they will also try to engage and trigger you. So not everyone you interact with is like an agent. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them are under an alternative narrative, and they feel like they're helping, or it's a community service or what have you. And everyone wants to be a cop. Okay. You know, everyone wants to be able to say, I say what's right and what's wrong or what have you. Everyone has that Judge Dredd complex. So agents will mobilize these people, or even cops. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to always make it out to be like some government shit, because gang stalking is a community program as well, that law enforcement or city governments employ when somebody, like, we've gone over this in the past, you know, has a good means for a lawsuit against the city or what have you, because everyone, they can just get other civic employees to participate in it, and they, say they might be able to log it as overtime or what have you, but essentially, I'm saying, it's job security. And it's how, cities will push people out of town or what have you to, yeah. So it's not always agents, but it's not always, city government employees or what have you doing fucked up shit to you. They also like to find these like adult losers who have a hero complex, and they're pretty easy to find. Do you know what I'm saying? You can just, best way to put it is, you can see sadness on a person, even though they don't know it. Like, you can see the fucking sadness on them, and then they give them this like holy war or whatever, and it gets a lot of, usually like lower education leveled people, people that, I'm saying, don't do a lot of critical thinking. I'm not trying to say they're poor, because, there's lots of contractors, construction workers, what have you, that make good money, what have you, that have been involved in at least in my abuse. But they don't like to think about a lot of things. They like to be told how to think. There's more of those people than you fucking realize, bro. But oh gosh, is my phone going dead? No. Okay, thank God. It's hot as shit, so these guys are, usually when your phone is super hot, that means some asshole is really curious what my phone is doing. Let me put on that app. I gotta keep the screen awake. I would hate for this to lose this. I don't want to go back and re-record it. I think we're gonna turn off Wi-Fi so my phone doesn't keep getting hot, even though these what's going on here? Pink. Okay, so moving on. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Oh, this is probably covering up the mic. Technical difficulties. But going back to it, so once you understand a target sequence, or you've had a long time to pay attention to them or what have you, you can then know, like, if I do this trigger or this pattern disruption on this person, they're going to transition to this. And I've already seen them do that action quite a bit. So you can kind of start predicting their behavior. So once you understand the target sequence or track record that you trigger, it's known as unintentional control. So basically, now somebody is pulling your strings, and that's, believe it or not, a lot of these techniques is where that old adage of puppet government, or you have handlers or what have you, is because it's being a handler, handling another person, what have you, is based on lots of subconscious triggers, knowing their desires, what makes them fucking tick, their thumb, what's their thumb screw, what really gets them turned, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, knowing the behaviors, history is essential, and tourists known to be experimenting. What's going on here? So if the pattern you're looking to engage is contradictory to a target's prior task, meaning, let's say they have a goal where I really need to put in a double overtime shift today, rent's due in 3 days, or my phone bill's due, or I really need to get this task done, or I really need to go and get to this place before a certain time. You're less likely to break someone's pattern, although it is possible if the tier of importance it comes from the top down. So let's say someone's getting a pizza, right? They're hungry. That's a desire they have. But if you want to disrupt a pattern, so they're in the middle of something where they desire. So it's still on a priority list in the human psyche. But if they hear their car alarm go off, that, what I'm saying, and the importance tier in their brain, that's of more importance to them. So you could, what I'm saying, so if, what I'm saying, if you're in the pizza restaurant, but from the open door you can hear your car alarm go off, you're going to drop the task of pizza and tend to your car. And you need to think about that when you are trying to trigger a target of a top-down approach. Whatever you're trying to transition them from, you have more success transitioning them to a higher priority activity than you do to a lower tiered priority activity, or the stimulus will be ignored, because it doesn't always happen. It's not like a robot. But you do want to trigger that emotional you want to have that emotional trigger to make them do a thing that you want to do. And this kind of gets into, what a handler is, or what puppeting a human is, or what have you. It gets so much more complicated, motherfucker. Like, you just have no idea. But once you understand the target sequence, I repeated that. Sorry. If the pattern you're looking to engage is contradictory to the target's prior task, then they're less likely to break. Sorry, I'm reading my notes here. Now, you can prime a target to do, you can break a person's behavior. So if they're engaging in something, if it assists in a goal that, will fulfill the target as well. So let's say a person is talking to someone they need to catch up with, but they really, they really are trying to get back into the dating world. So maybe they have more heightened awareness about females or a male around them. So they're talking to a person they really haven't caught up with in a long time. It's not seemed like a really important conversation, but what have you. And you can use like hot girl walking by as a trigger, or a hot guy, or what have you. But you understand, like, it needs to fulfill some sort of need. So once you understand, okay, so breaking the pattern usually must satisfy a desire or an alternative goal. Now you can program a desire or an alternative goal previous to maybe a pattern break you wanted to initiate with one of these people. So you can engineer a scenario where they felt inadequate, or they were embarrassed, or what have you. You need to create a hole. If you create like a hole, or make them feel inferior, or what have you, then you kind of primed in a new goal or task, or you programmed a new goal or task for this person. So let's say you embarrassed them, made them feel embarrassed about their car, made them feel embarrassed about their money or their clothes, or how they talk or they laugh or whatever. You can do quite a bit of negging to program a new desire or alternative goal into that person. And then, kind of almost carrot stick their pattern, breaking their pattern with, understanding where that hole you created, where it is on the tier of priorities, and using that to trigger it. So let's say you want to create a new trigger, but you want to have it at a high, emotional response level. You can create that if you'd like in your target, so then you can use it for later. So if they're engaging in a particular activity or behavior, you can kind of change their pattern. Now we're going to go into the triggers and everything else, but I want to tell you kind of like all the rules first of pattern disruption, and then we'll go into the triggers. And then you can, put it together like, oh, so if I do this, and then I pair it up with this, we'll do the math problem later. But right now I'm going to give you kind of like the rules, so to speak. Now the cues must match up, the pattern breaking cues. So the behavior you get the person to initiate in must match up with a previous stimulus, meaning they must have something that matches up with it, or something that reminds them of it. It doesn't have to be a direct pattern break. You don't have to, let's say somebody is engaged in a certain activity, but you want them to get in their car because maybe you have like a car accident planned waiting for them in a couple streets, down the street or whatever. So what you could do is, make sure that they know how to drive a car, or that they, what I'm saying, they have a quick way of doing it, or they understand all the actions ahead of time to do that sorts of things. So to do all the actions to make breaking a pattern, to get them to initiate a new pattern of behavior, to make it useful to you. So, make sure it has, it matches up with a previous stimulus. Now cues can, when you think of a cue is basically somebody is doing something and you would like to interrupt their pattern of behavior, pattern of thought, pattern of speaking, what have you. You need a cue. You need something that's going to trigger that change. And it has to be subconscious. You can't you can directly speak to the target, right? The target for this enhanced uh, torture technique. But subconscious triggers always yield better results, and it feels like magic. And you won't, and if you're a target, you won't even realize it's happening to you, because you didn't realize that somebody was, creating a library in your fucking head. Believe it or not, that happens. If you want to figure out what that's all about, check out our episode called Becoming a Rosetta Stone. So cues that match, you want to think of like grade school building up. So the best cues are ones that are based in like color, shape, similarity. So let's say you want to get someone to start thinking about like a love interest. You know what I'm saying? Because you're about to take them on a wild ride. This has happened to me quite a bit with that girl that was paid to be my fake girlfriend. Was they would start priming me with like white cars, because that girl drove a white car, because you associate things with people you care about. And I would say more so after we parted ways, it was more care like I don't want something bad to happen to that person, and less like, I hope we get back together kind of thing. It was more like I felt guilty that all this shit happened. I didn't realize that, she was well aware that this was going to happen to me. But then they would do white cars, or they would do like the same model of car. You know what I'm saying? And then like, not to, so that would start triggering me to think about that person, because that car would come into the parking lot, or drive, or creep right past me, or what have you. And then, they would then transition, since now they know I'm thinking about that person, then they would play like a song we had together and get me start thinking about that person. And then, they would then trigger a response. This is real. This would happen. So this is a prime example of pattern breaking. Is they use the car and the color of the car specifically. But first they would start with the color, and then raise my awareness to the color and the model. And then like, what I'm saying, somebody would drive by with the window open, playing like a song of a thing that, not our song, but like a song that reminded me of like a thing or an action that happened. And then from there, a little bit of street theater would come into play. And then somebody with like red hair would be like, literally, I'm describing exactly a scenario that happened to me. And only now, since I understand the behavioral science behind it, do I understand that they were like trying to get me excited, or thinking about something, or raise my awareness level, but they broke my pattern. I was at the fucking auto zone. You know what I'm saying? I was thinking about fixing my car. I was in the middle of it. I was looking at like the Chilton's manual. If you know what Chilton's manual, it's like when you work on your own car. It's like a book that tells you how everything goes together. Walking into a fucking auto zone. And then, when I got to the auto zone, there was a bunch of white cars there. that kind of like started reminding me like, oh yeah, white car, you know, blah, blah, blah. I started looking around for her car. Believe it or not, then all of a sudden the same model of her car starts rolling up. And then this girl was a redhead. And then not too long at a restaurant, a few stores away from the AutoZone, it was a restaurant. They were sitting outside. They're having a really heated argument. And the girl started like fake crying or whatever. That's where a lot of the street theater comes into play. But they slowly had to raise my awareness. But they had to break my pattern first, and they did it at a color level. Then they moved it to the car association. Then it went from car to the girl with the red hair, and started making me think like, oh man, that would really suck if that girl was in danger. And then I get in my fucking car. Remember, I was telling you about the hacked radio shit that they have, right? Then they start playing about how a girl was murdered by her boyfriend. You know, said he was abusive. You know, he was a former boxer, and this girl started dating this boxer after me or whatever, supposedly. And so that got me started thinking like, oh fuck, should I like drive by this girl's house to see if she's okay or whatever? Because it raised my anxiety levels, but about that topic. You understand? Now this is where this stuff gets used for sabotage. Is there was 3 attempts to try to plow into my fucking car on the way to go and check on this itch that they created in my fucking brain. But that wouldn't have, you understand? So you see how this can be used to get a person into a different pattern, a different flow when they want to disrupt you. And they usually do when you're outside, because they can't, if they attack you in your house, they have to break in, they have to do shit. So they wait for you to go outside. They'll try to break your pattern, try to raise your anxiety levels, try to get you to engage into a behavior you weren't going to do, which I totally dropped that whole repairing my car thing. And then I was like, well, fuck, you know what I'm saying? Because like I said, at that point, I was considering my priority level was not looking for a mate. In fact, I thought I would, you know, and I still think, you know, that would just bring a bad situation to this person. But they do that. They raise your anxiety levels, and they use these contractors to do things like street theater, and they pair it up, and they plan these things before you leave the house. If they know, oh, hey, he's going to be leaving the house. We fucked with this car yesterday, and we fucked with this car. It won't start. We know he has to get to work on Monday. It's Saturday. He's most likely, and he works on his own car. He's going to, this is important. It's like hunting a human. And this is how you can kill people without making them look like they got murdered on purpose, believe it or not. So that's why it's important, these pattern breaks. I'm going on a rant here. I'm going to go back to the notes. But I want you to understand this, how this is used. So they broke my pattern with the color of the cars, and then they changed my pattern of thought from shifting from my priority of fixing my car to a higher priority of them knowing that I felt guilt because I didn't know this. I didn't think this girl was working with my provocators. Unfortunately, she was. But then they raised my awareness from there. Then they had some street theater. So they had some contractors like act out a thing. I mean, the girl could have been wearing a wig. I didn't even see her face. I saw the guy's face. She wasn't looking at me. But, you know what I'm saying? Then that raised my awareness to that. And then I got in the fucking car. And then, since, like I said, they have, they'll usually put like a CDMA, or not CDMA, essentially a smartphone. And then they'll, and put it in somewhere in your car, but also with a shortwave radio thrower. It throws a signal. And so, believe it or not, it can override, if they put a strong enough amp in it or whatever, it can override your car radio, and you can start to think that you're listening to the car radio. And in reality, you're listening to audio being transmitted through a Bluetooth transmitter to FM transmitter to your radio. And then what they do is then they raise my awareness even higher with the fake radio thing. Like, this shit, you have no idea. Like, they use this shit to kill people, you understand? To make it look like they, you know, yeah. And then they got my awareness heightened level, and then I started driving towards that area just because, you know, I knew kind of where she lived or whatever, and I was just keeping an eye, make sure she's still around, because I still felt guilty. But there was quite a concentrate, you know, there was quite the effort to make sure I couldn't talk to this girl, because to compare notes, I guess. Who the fuck knows? And that's really all I was more worried about than anything. Because you have to understand, when you're in this program, you don't think about romantic partners. You think about your people's safety, because you've been knocked down Maslow's pyramid all the way down. You're at the bottom level of things that are important to you. Look that up on your phone right now or whatever if you're having a hard time referencing it. And when I was on, so I was like, fuck. So that made me worried. And then I totally dropped that repairing my car shit and had to scratch that itch. Is that girl okay? Whatever. She's not too far from the auto place. That, oh yeah, by the way, they made sure that the normal AutoZone I go to didn't have the part I needed. So I needed to go to a second one that wasn't very far from that girl's location. And then because they knew, like, oh, it's not too far, it doesn't seem that much effort. You need to understand, it's like hunting a human. And 3 attempts were fucking like this Ford Expedition almost fucking drove right through me by running a fucking red light. Yeah, and 2 more fucking just super close calls. But, you know what I'm saying? Because if they can make it look like a car accident, then it doesn't look like a fucking assassination. You know what I'm saying? It looks like a fucking car accident. If you insure the shit out of the car that you're pretty confident is going to hit the person, there's probably not going to be any repercussions, especially if they're not drunk. It's not going to be like whatever. You know what I'm saying? But they did that. That's 3 attempts on me just going to this fucking chick's house. But that's how you can use pattern breaking or pattern disruption to, because the first time it happened, I was just like, oh my gosh, that was really close. And then it happened again, and then it happened on the way home, and I was like, oh, these motherfuckers are waiting for me to leave the house so they can fucking try this shit. It wasn't a conscious understanding like, oh, I'm being like, I had to understand how this program worked so I can look at things in retrospect of what was going on. But that's how this pattern disruption can be used. You can disrupt a pattern, or you can, maybe this person was watching a movie and then you disrupt their pattern and you know that they just bought a food that they like, right? And they're in the middle of like watching a movie or TV. And if you disrupt their pattern or what have you, to remind them about, oh, I have this thing in the fridge or whatever, usually they'll use the TV you're watching. They'll pop up a commercial about a thing that's similar to the thing that you have. Because you got to think about, commercials are almost like a pattern disruption. And if they've already laced the thing that they know is in your fridge, that was going to remind you of that or whatever, you're going to go and you're going to eat that thing. So that's also how pattern disruption is used. Like, pattern disruption is so important, and it can be used in such a myriad of ways. You just have no clue. But, yeah. So that's why the cues have to match up with the stimulus. They have to have a point of reference for all these things after you break the pattern to then put them into a new pattern of thought, awareness, concern, what have you, so you could do things like make a new goal to go and look at, to go check on someone. So if you know someone is coming in a particular direction, then you can plan how you're going to try to like T-bone them ahead of time or what have you. Like, these pattern disruption, it's important to know, you know, you're going to shift someone from one pattern to another. But yeah, the cues got to match the color, shape, similarity. They work best to align to a desired task you want the target to disrupt to. So their aligned task at that moment, I'm just using it as an example, was they needed to get my attention, raise my awareness, raise my anxiety, change my desire pattern to then move towards the target, which they already had a situation ready for me. Unfortunately, I was already kind of on high alert because I understood somebody wanted to do harm to me at the time. I didn't understand, you know what I'm saying? So my driving was very offensive at the time, and that's the only thing that saved my life, is the fact that I was already kind of, while you're going through this program, you maintain this like readiness. So even when you're at a relaxed state, you're kind of ready for stuff. That's what being in prolonged states of fight or flight has done to me, and I fucking hate it. But unfortunately, that's the only reason why it was so many close calls, and it got sloppier after the last 2. You can tell the first one was what was planned, but you know, it's, yeah. But that's how you can get people to go into new desired tasks, and if you understand the pattern, or you understand their desire cues and where it ranks on, let's say, a pyramid of importance, then you can move someone to a new pattern. And that's important, so you can plan fucked up things like I just told you about. Now, there's 2 methods. There's top-down, where meaning you want to introduce a new desire or a new goal to the target that is more important than their current goal. Like what I was saying, you could be, in line at the store to buy fucking socks, but you got, your car alarm starts buzzing on your keys if you got one of those things that shows you if your car's been broken into or not, and then oh, change of priorities. This is higher up the tier, so that's called top-down pattern disruption. Bottom-up pattern disruption is more akin to like priming, meaning let's say I'm just meandering around somewhere, I'm taking a walk or what have you. I don't have any real intention or goal. I'm walking around my house. I'm not really doing anything. It's like a lazy Saturday. This is bottom up pattern disruption where, you know what I'm saying? What's a pattern disruption thing that happened with me? These guys in town, while I was going through this abuse, let me share an anecdotal story that's true. They try to scramble you. They put you through the washing machine. I think we have a episode called The Washing Machine where they try to keep you guessing why you're being abused, so you don't concentrate on stopping it. You concentrate on like the source. You know what I'm saying? But that's just to buy time so they can continue to put your foot deeper and deeper in the fucking grave. So there was this time when they tried to convince me, because they moved the goalpost constantly. And believe it or not, that those goalposts or narratives as to why you're being abused, targeted, what have you, is also fed to people in your community. We talk about Gish Gallop, where they flood your community, with enough rumors about you that something's going to match up to somebody. And one of the rumors they not rumors, one of the narratives they tried to feed me was this was happening because I made an anti-George Bush t-shirt back in 2003. No bullshit. They really fed me this. They really beat me over the head with this. They convinced me that was what's going on. And they will do that. They will keep beating you a narrative. They'll keep beating you with a narrative through many subconscious things, triggers, harassment, etc., until you fucking believe that's what's going on. Do you understand? And if the brain makes sense of its world and gives it its world context based on its stimuli. So it's high-level gaslighting. And if you're, especially in a military town where there's no shortage of people constantly being trained to getting fucked up, trained, for field ops or what have you, there's plenty of these people here. San Diego is probably one of the worst places to go under Cointelpro. But one of the narratives they tried to beat me over the head with, and they really got me going for a while. They started like chasing me around town with like Freemason t-shirts and shit like that. Like they really tried to fucking stickers on their cars were all Freemason stickers, but it wasn't. There was just contractors trying to make me crazy, trying to get me to go into the police and say stupid shit like the Freemasons are after me. They try to do that. It's about discrediting you, but it wasn't. It was a bunch of fucking contractors and a bunch of locals being told that, they're helping their community. We're trying to push this guy out. They give them that whole, holy war narrative that makes retards feel cool about themselves, which there is no shortage of. But so they hit me over the head with that narrative. And believe it or not, the Bushes are actually pretty tied into Freemasonry. Believe it or not, they're kind of, they're not like the king of the Freemasons, but there's like Simpsons episodes that refer to them in it. There's lots of, Freemason temples will like celebrate the election of so-and-so president, what have you. Like there's quite a few of those lodges that really are tied into the Bush family, especially in Texas, like crazy. You know how there's like Trumpers now? Well, mix that with a subculture that loves keeping and talking in secretive ways, and tie it into a political family, and they start to believe that they're like the keepers of this family, or like they're the next line of defense in town or whatever. You'd better not talk about my president. The same way people are like Trump, Biden is not my president kind of shit. Like you really need to understand. But more so in the Freemason community, there is a few people, not in San Diego's. San Diego, where there's some chill. I mean, really, I've grown up around a lot of people, Freemasons and stuff like that. It's not all magical as it sounds. It's a bunch of locals who like keeping secrets, and maybe they help each other cheat on their wives every once in a while. But anyways, I'm meandering off. But they really hit me with this, right? These contractors and cops and stuff like that who are part of my abuse, because they work together. Because San Diego is a military town, believe it or not, so they work together quite a bit. It's really interchangeable. But they tried to beat me over the head over this T-shirt thing. And one thing I had with this T-shirt was these blue gloves, and I had a trash can full of them in my garage when I used to make T-shirts back in college. And there's this T-shirt, basically, my business partner at the time for this little T-shirt business we had. I made a T-shirt, and then this guy, he kept bitching to me about how I never used his design ideas because he didn't know how to use the design programs. And I was in, I was in and out of art college. I'd have to go back every time I got more money so I could finish, more semesters or whatever. And he didn't know how to use the design shit. So we and him had an argument that I never listened to his design ideas. We had this argument, and then finally I caved. I used one of his design ideas. Unfortunately, I had George Bush in this T-shirt, but it was really shittily made. There was only one of these T-shirts ever made. And if you're not really good at making T-shirts or know how to make T-shirt screens, if you know what I'm fucking talking about, you couldn't even realize what the fuck it was that you were looking at. Someone had to tell you that's what our intention was. Instead, it came out as a bunch of blobs, not very well defined. Because when you're not good at making screens and stuff yourself, most people have like a guy who just does that. If you don't know what the T-shirt business, whatever. Anyways, long story longer, they really tried to beat me over the head with that. And they really tried to mix in a lot of that Freemasonry bullshit in the midst of it. And there's a lot of symbolism tied in with that Freemasonry shit, like owls and all sorts of other crap. And they really tried to mix this new narrative that they beat me over the head with, that like this was happening to me in 2016 because of one T-shirt that was made and only I owned it, and then it just magically disappeared and never sold, nothing. So it just disappeared one day. I remember, but it was literally within like weeks after I made it back in 2003, and all the way in 2016. Now this is about that, and that's why all this fucked up shit is happening in my town. Whatever, it didn't match up, but when you're put in this state of psychosis. When you put in this state of psychosis, like you never, know. Did I touch that shit, motherfucker? Hold on. Fuck it. Yeah, I guess I did record that. Sorry, I don't want to mess up this recording, and I'm doing this all on my phone, man. You don't know what it's like to make everything you do on a phone. I will tell you, making a website is harder than making a beat, making a catchy song, making a video, whatever, on a cell phone. If you want to know what the hardest thing to make on a fucking cell phone is a website that will look good on computers and phones, and doing that all with the phone. But yeah, there's technical difficulties with this shit. I apologize. Anyway, so yeah, they tried to mix up all that lore with me. I'm getting to where this identifies with the subject matter, because I feel like this anecdote will help you. But I had a lot of backstory I had to fill in. So what they would do they would try to, like, I was just like, sometimes I would go for a walk to clear my head, or if the radiation shit in my house got too fucked up. And so I'd go over these walks, and they would like to like place these the same kind of gloves and shit like that other places around, on my walk and stuff like that. Sometimes they put them next to dead owls, and they would put two blue gloves on a dead owl and shit like that. They really, and they put these things subtly. So if they know I'm going for a walk, they'll put that on my journey or whatever, or if they pay attention to what my route is and what have you. And, you really have to understand this is a long game, because it's psychological, because it's going to look better if you kill yourself or it seems like you got into a car accident or whatever, if they can do these things psychologically, and, a lot of people who work in intelligence or even Pentagon contractors, which is like, they have some intelligence training, believe it or not, how you gain respect in that field is like style points. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to kill someone. They want to poison them till they kill themselves. They want to engineer a car crash. They want to, because it's about style points in that culture. Even with the contractors, ones that aren't, um, yeah. But they would try to then change my pattern from the bottom up, because I didn't have a priority on my list. But they wanted to transition me over to that. And then once I had the association in my head about that certain narrative, and then I would see the dead animal, that kind of raises your awareness, starts to make you think about your mortality. And then they build on that and build on that and build on that. And so they would pattern switch me from that to try to bring me to a new level of anxiety, and then like try to daisy chain that up with enough events to make me think that my abuse was so over the top, I should probably go back and try the police again, even though I knew that was a dry well. So then I would go to the cops and talk about the motherfucking Freemasons and the fucking George Bush and fucking coming. Like, they want you to sound like a crazy person so they can put you in a nut house, which is another way that they can fuck you up. Because if you get declared a schizo, then everything you say after that is they're just going to attribute that to your, fake mental illness that they push you over the edge for. And so that's bottom up. And it started with, the blue gloves, and then I saw another one, blue gloves, but with a dead owl on it. And then the brain works off association, believe it or not. Ask any advertiser that's worth his salt who makes over 100 G's a year. They'll tell you the same fucking thing. Advertising or making people think about things, think about your brand, think about your product, think about buying a product, is all based on association. But that's also how a lot of this torture shit works. And that's how this pattern changing works. And pattern disruption, as you can see through this, there's a lot of, utility to it. And so bottom up. So we learn about top down and then bottom up, like I told you with that owl bullshit. But that's how they started, disrupting my pattern from bottom up, because I wasn't thinking about that shit. I wasn't thinking about that narrative. I wasn't thinking about that was going on. But they, from the bottom up, then they, started raising my awareness to that new thing, since there was no priority. But bottom up, a lot of behavioral scientists really don't believe in bottom up pattern disruption when it comes to pattern disruption in the social and the psychological science methodology of the practice. And so you'll read lots of papers where they say bottom up pattern disruption really doesn't exist. You're more just reminding them and showing them associations. Think of it as building a pyramid from the bottom up, of building association to a point. Now, let's go into the lists of triggers that could get you to disrupt your pattern. And now that I've shown you how pattern disruption can be used to harm you or get you to do things that harm you, etc., when you're under this abuse, you have to be hyper aware that someone is trying to disrupt your pattern to engage in some behavior that, like I said, it could be like a poisoned food that they put in while you were gone. You left the house, they swapped it out, or they laced it with something, or what have you. Or it can be that they're trying to get you to go and raise your anxiety level to go and check on someone, so then they can try to hit you with a fucking car to make it look like an accident, so no one looks into your death or whatever. This is legit. This is legit. Like how they use this. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. You need to understand, like, the same way, I say this so many times, but the same way nuclear energy is good because it creates power without any CO2. The other side of that is you can make a nuclear bomb. You understand? So any tool can also be a weapon. You understand? So any tool, either whether that be an actual tool or a fucking a method, which is kind of like a tool, or methodology can be used in a positive or negative way. So it's always important when you're going through this abuse, if you are going through this abuse and you're like trying to find a point of reference, because that's what the hardest thing for me was, is don't try to type crazy things into your browser to try to find answers for your abuse. Think of it in a tool way. So you're like, if you think, someone's shooting a gun at you, but you have no idea what a gun is, don't type in, long metal thing, point at me, go boom, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's what essentially it looks like when you type in crazy conspiracy shit. Understand there's always another side of it. There's always another side of it. Type in, loud explosion and, sulfuric smell or whatever, and then understand application with metal, with metal device, and then you'll build from there. That's how I discovered about the radiation things being used on me. Was I had to start from the bottom and build up. But if I searched in a tool sense, not magical thing that makes me want to poop my pants, magical nausea feeling makes me want to poop my pants when certain cars run up to me or what have you. I had to build from the bottom up. So if you are under a kind of abuse, and this podcast or our wiki hasn't solved it, or at least put you in a better route to figure that shit out, try searching for whatever's going on or making you confused or scared or whatever. How can this be used in a practical application that's not scary? And you'll most likely find 100 papers written on that with backed up sources rather than crazy shit that you typed in, because it's all going to be a bunch of mind maps drawing one thing from MK Ultra to fucking CIA's control of Djibouti or what. You've seen those maps, those conspiracy association maps, and then you're gonna go down this rabbit hole where you thinking all this crazy shit's happening to you. It's fucking bananas, but it's not. It's enhanced, something to do with this enhanced torture, Cointelpro, whatever. But so when you're thinking of things that, every time you think of a part of this program and you need more references, or you're researching something in particular, or you want to get your facts together, research it in a practical application. I had a perfect example is this guy on Twitter, a nice guy. I don't know him personally, but we chit chat. I see him make comments, and I'll comment on his stuff. I'll just be nice to him. And he listed something as predictive programming, where he was listing on how there's this phenomenon in conspiracy circles called predictive programming, and it's basically how the government reveals their plans to us and stuff like that. And who the fuck knows? I don't fucking know. But I'm not going to comment on something I don't know. But what I do know is in the practical application of that, what he was describing, I was like, oh, that's consumer priming, not predictive programming. He called it predictive programming. And I was like, no, that's consumer priming. Because brands do that. They will, before let's say a movie launches or what have you, believe it or not, they'll do a meme campaign. There'll be a viral video that has to do with a very shallow, they'll use their network to distribute a fake viral video, although they'll make sure it looks real. You'll think it's real. That has to do with a very shallow association with maybe an upcoming movie. And if they don't have a big movie budget, they will make a certain meme or TikTok popular that has to do with very, very thin veneer of this upcoming movie coming up. And then it'll raise people's awareness of this thing being funny or being hilarious or whatever. And then if they don't have a big budget, they'll do that meme campaign first because it won't cost as much money instead of doing this huge media blitz. And then when they start paying for the small ad budget that they have for that movie, it'll kind of be related to this. Oh, this is kind of related to this fucking meme that's kind of going off, but it doesn't cost as much to promote that meme or engineer a meme or make a funny shareable thing. And that's consumer priming. You're priming the consumer to be willing and ready for a particular product, service, movie, what have you, ahead of time, by, creating an enjoyable experience. In the conspiracy circles, they have this whole theory, but it's literally the same thing. They call it predictive programming, and it's not. It's consumer priming. And there's 100 million, papers written by focus groups and researchers, etc., on consumer priming that are literally the things that everyone's talking about. But they gave it this spooky name, and it makes you look like a crazy person. So, always search for the thing that you think is happening to you, and it seems scary, and somehow somebody's sharing like images with you in some of these gang stalking forums of people like fucking satellites. There's like pictures of satellites and a picture of like the human brain with a chip in it. Like, bro, these motherfuckers go off. You always got to think about things in the practical application. So sorry about that rant, but I felt like I had to cross that T and dot that fucking I. Let's talk about triggers that are available to transition your behavior. What are pattern breaking triggers that are going to be used on you to break your pattern to get you to engage in a behavior that might be self-destructive to you, which you don't know has been set up, whether it be sit in a part, go home and sit down in a certain chair that has like radiated hardware in it, make you think like, oh, it's time to eat again. So you eat something that's been poisoned or laced or drugged. Go check on a person that you think might be in danger or just to scratch the itch or what have you, and then they fucking try to engineer like a car wreck on the way there. All this pattern disruption, there's a myriad of triggers, and some of them are triggers that aren't going to do like immediate harm to you, but they've used on me was to poison me, do real damage to my liver and kidneys and pancreas and shit like that. And so they use, all sorts of different triggers to remind me, oh, I bought that thing. It's in the fridge. Or, oh, yeah, I probably need some water right now. I am a little dehydrated. They'll interrupt these pattern disruptions. They know it's in my goal tier, especially since my health is failing, the different things that I'm concerned about and where they're at. They pay attention to you quite a bit, believe it or not. So here's a list of those triggers. One of them is hunger. The even reason why I even one of them is hunger. So they'll start like, if it's been like 4 or 5 hours, because the human appetite is usually kind of needs to be recharged every like 4 hours, 5 hours. And so they'll keep track of how long it's been since you've eaten something, and then like they'll try to pattern shift you, so you'll be involved in something, whether you're working on like a video or whatever, to start thinking about food. So you'll start, they'll try to make noises. Like in my situation, they'll try to make noises in the kitchen or whatever to get me to start thinking about, oh yeah, probably it's time to eat food or whatever. But it's subconscious because you don't think they're doing it personally for you. They're not directly engaging with you, but they're making all these noise, etc., engaged that associates with the action which they want me to perform. So hunger, a to-do list. So like I said, with my car where they sabotaged it, and they knew that what I had to then, I don't have that part. I'm gonna have to go to the place. You know what I'm saying? They know the place that I want me to go, whatever. So they'll pattern shift you using things that they know you have to do. They'll use a loud noise. Maybe the noise will be associated with a particular. So let's say you're, talking to a person, or you're playing a video game or whatever. Then they'll create a noise that makes you stop and think about a higher priority than whatever you're doing. And it'll start wrestling your associations in your brain. Then they'll have a pattern map for you to engage in. An influence. So somebody that maybe you think is influential, somebody you look up to, what have you. You could be doing something, but then they'll use, let's say, like as a celebrity or a thought leader or whatever, and they'll use them on TV or on your phone or what have you to raise your awareness to a certain thing that maybe you would associate with success that has to do with that person. So they use influence. They'll use a person that maybe has gained rapport with you personally, or interaction, to gain your interest. They'll use gesturing. Think of it like the best thing to think about with pattern disruption or communication sabotage is yawning, right? If you yawn, you see someone else yawn, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, hey, what time is it? It's getting pretty late, right? Then you start becoming aware to your what time it is. You change your pattern. Um, daisy chaining. I think I already explained daisy chaining. Things like first they raise your awareness, like with the white cars. They notice the white car with the same model looked just like a car, and then it was the redhead. Like, you know what I'm saying? So they'll daisy chain these things. Environmental change. So maybe you'll be put into a room with the same color paint as, you know, something that reminds you of your house. Let's say you go in and there's a green accent wall in your house. They'll, you know what I'm saying, they'll introduce you into a space and environment with that same paint. And believe it or not, you'll associate your room subconsciously, like, oh yeah, that's just like the thing, blah, blah, blah. You won't think hard about it. But if there's something you have to do at home on the table next to that wall or what have you, you'll start to think about that subconsciously. But in reality, they're trying to trigger a series of events, possibly. So keep that in mind. So colors can change your pattern. Environmental change, space. They can remove elements to disrupt your pattern. So I use the car crash example because fuck, it's they try to fuck with that, especially because people can just say it was a car accident. You know what I'm saying? So let's say you're making a fucking sandwich and you've been thinking about this sandwich all day, right? So you're on the couch, they trigger your behavior, they disrupt your pattern, and they start making you think about, oh, I need to eat something. It's been about 5 hours since the last time I ate. And you go to make a sandwich. What they'll do is they'll break into the house, like I said, with all this other podcast. People breaking in your crib constantly. Almost every night, somebody breaks into my spot. Almost every night, they change something just to let me know they were there. I've called the cops so many times they're not trying to listen to me anymore. That's on purpose. But so you're gonna have people constantly fucking breaking into your shit. So what they'll do is, like, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make a sandwich, and let's say that, you know, they will. You are positive you have all the fucking meat and cheese that you like in there. You just go to make your sandwich, and then there won't be any cheese. And maybe and you know, possibly maybe they take some other things out of the fridge and cupboard, so you can't make any other kinds of foods that they know you'd be interested in making. So now you got to get in your car, because now you already started that thing. Like, you got to go get in your car and go and fucking go to the store, and then on the way you're gonna get fucked up. Or maybe in your car is where they have the radiation device that they hid in your car, and maybe they're just like, yeah, let's give them some more exposure, so let's make them take a trip. Do you understand? So pattern disruption can hurt you, and it doesn't have to hurt you like in a dramatic way every time. It could be just taking little nibbles at you each time, but they're going to continue to disrupt your pattern to do things that are taking little tiny bites out of you. You know, death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. Environmental change, removing elements, halting reinforcement. I fucking write that. Halting reinforcement. I'll have to come back to that. Trigger phrases. Trigger phrases are, you know, words that'll remind you of somebody, remind you of a task you have to do. Let's say maybe you're cutting it up with a buddy, and then somebody near you. Remember that episode where that 3 hour long episode I did when I talked about fucking all the things that can happen to you when you're traveling, on how they try to use people will go and try to will talk loudly about a new album from that movie, The Corporation, to get people thinking and talking about doing the album, whatever. Well, let's say there's something on your honey-do list, and they want you to get back in your car to get exposed to more like some radiated hardware they have in the headrest or what have you, to keep chipping away at that cancer they want you to die of, and want you to think that it happened by fluke or whatever. They'll have somebody walk by you and be like, oh yeah, you know, let's say that you had to, I don't know, fix the fucking garden fence, and somebody will walk past you and be like, yeah, the garden fence is I think it's on sale at Home Depot right now, but they know that was on your to-do list, so they'll have somebody walk by and say something akin to that to get you back on track to do something or what have you. So, they can use trigger phrasing. They can use your name to break your pattern. They can use somebody else's name, and then they could like talk about a person who personally. Like if somebody has like a unique name like Shonda or whatever. I'm just using that. This is a bad example, but Shonda. And then now, but somebody's going to be named Shonda right next to you. And let's say this, you're talking to some girl on the phone named Shonda, but it just so happens this group, these two people are right next to you, talking next to you or doing something next to you, and they say Shonda or what have you. That name will then break your pattern to then pay attention to what maybe they have to say. Or maybe the person's name is also Steve, like your name is Steve or Dave or Frank or whatever. And then you'll start to listen to what they were saying even though you were doing something else. It'll break your pattern. And then perhaps the subject matter that they were talking about has to relate to something that they're trying to initiate a new thought pattern into. So trigger phrases can be used. So pay attention to the words people say, and then because a lot of this stuff happens subconsciously, like hunger or smells or gestures like yawns. That's subconscious. That's a subconscious. Like I said the word yawn. I'm fucking yawning right now. Jesus Christ. So yeah, that's something. So trigger phrases. These things happen subconsciously, and you move on to a new pattern, and it's usually been one that's already been planned for you. And like I said, it doesn't have to be like immediately sinister. It could be like slowly chipping away at you. And they got like a secret life insurance policy, and they're just like thinking, I got like 18 months to 3 years of chipping away at this dude, and I'm gonna get like $1 million fucking payout, and I'm cash it out 6 months after this motherfucker has a funeral, after everyone's already forgotten about him. No one's gonna ask any fucking questions. Think about it, 3 years of work, you get like a fucking couple $100 cash payout. There's not an investment opportunity that can produce that kind of money. It's normal though, especially with these contractors, especially since they work with these organized crime groups here in San Diego. Location. So they could like bring you to a location or make you drive past a location that has some sort of emotional trigger to it that'll break your pattern, break your thought pattern. So, what they'll do is maybe for that scenario, they might reroute your car's GPS. Not the most efficient way, but makes you drive past this current place, so then they can begin your new pattern, thinking about another person, thinking about another topic, whatever, and then have a new series of patterns to go less along with that. Maybe up ahead, they're going to have a little bit of a traffic block or what have you. And then now you have an alternative. Oh, well, do I want to sit in traffic, or I'm going to go see this person? That reminds me of this place I'm at now. You understand? It can happen in a myriad of ways. Smells. They can use songs. Like for me, they use that Every Breath You Take song a lot with me, because it said like, I'll be watching you. And they always love doing that shit. So they would use that song to like change my pattern, to put me in a state of anxiety. But they can use songs that you like, what I'm saying, or what have you, to change your pattern, to get you thinking about a certain person. And then if you're thinking about that person, you open up your phone and start looking at their fucking, their profile or what have you. And then that's going to trigger all sorts of things, because we already know they have complete control over the internet. At least if you're a target. Phrases and words, sounds can break your pattern. Colors, we're right into that example. Actions, like seeing someone do a certain action, maybe out of the corner of your eye or what have you, will trigger a break in your pattern, and then they can introduce a new pattern. The time of day, believe it or not, just the time of day. A certain time of day will be like, oh, what time is it? Oh, it's this time. I should be doing this. And then they'll have a new sequence of events for you to play out by, having stuff missing from the action you were going to do at that certain time. Or perhaps, they cause a trauma in the target that happens normally around a certain time of day. Like for me, they always used to do the radiation shit when they were really trying to push they really try to push a certain narrative, they will do it down to like numbers associated. So like when they were pushing that George Bush narrative, every morning at 4:30, at 4:43, I'm sorry, 4:43, they would hit me with that radiation shit for a while. And sooner or later, I started having the association with 4:43. And it took me a while to understand why it was every day at that time for a while. And then they started putting lots of stuff in my news feeds about 43 being the number of the president, whatever. They beat you over the head with it until you get it. But you weren't thinking that at all. They'll keep beating over your head, beating yourself over the head, what have you. And they'll introduce other stimulus to explain things. So it builds a bridge to what they're trying to communicate. If they're trying to use a stimulus and it's not registering with you, they'll build a bridge by, a limerick, a story, digestion of content, something similar to get you to start translating things in that way. So they'll start showing you things like with me. They started showing me things with the number 45 on it because it was during Trump's presidency that this shit was happening. And they started introducing the idea of like presidents love things that's based off their number. And then once they introduced that thought bridge to me, I forgot how they did the clock, but it doesn't matter. They built the bridge so I would understand the stimulus because they thought that I made the connection. And like I said, this stuff with this radiation, you can't see it, can't hear it. My neighbors can't fucking hear it. You know what I'm saying? I tried to explain it to the fucking cops. These guys, by the time I go to the police or call the police and the police respond, these assholes are going to be out from under my house or off of my roof, gone. Like, and then I'll just be the asshole who keeps calling the fucking police. Do you understand how this radiation shit works? But yeah, so time of day, they'll trigger it with passion, so things you're really passionate about. So if you're doing something, they want you to go on a new thought process. They'll have it relate to your passion. Is this thing hitting the microphone? I really hope not. I hope you haven't heard me and sound like I was stuck in a hole. Pain. There'll be a certain kind of pain that they'll use to trigger your pattern disruption or discomfort. Pain isn't the same thing as discomfort. Discomfort is like feeling nauseous or having a wave of nausea hit you. Pain isn't discomfort, but usually used by the same methods to inflict that. So you can use these triggers to redirect an action, offer a substitute action, which will most likely, offer a substitute. So you broke that pattern. This isn't going to happen, or they'll remove something from, a pattern of behavior, like they'll remove a certain thing, like, oh, there's no more cheese. Well, I'll use this or what have you. They'll offer a substitute, and that substitute will usually be harmful, but it's important that they broke that pattern. So you look for that alternative substitute because it gives you the illusion of choice at the same time. So if you have the illusion of choice, when one of these things will be plotted out for a person to eat, consume, wash themselves with, maybe you're, oh, for some reason I thought I had a full bottle of shampoo. I don't have any. I'll use this other random thing under the counter I didn't know I had while I'm looking for, if I have another bottle of that. And that'll be laced with something, and I'll put that all over my body and absorb it into my skin. So substitutes can be used, but they have to break your pattern to get you to choose a substitute. But think of it like you have the illusion of choice, but the choices have been made for you. So all the choices that you pick will still be in the favor of the people abusing you. And pattern disruption can happen digitally too. Believe it or not, pattern disruption, you can find a ass ton of articles on pattern disruption because it has to do with social media. Scrolling, how they call it doom scrolling. Well, there's people who actually know their shit when it comes to social media, know about creating content that disrupts patterns, your scroll pattern. They were trying to make you to stop scrolling, stop on their video. So that's why you'll have those videos where like the video will be cut off and it'll have the title of the video up in a giant black bar, and then below it it'll have like a subtitle, what have you, and it'll look like total garbage, but it made you stop scrolling. She's like, wait, what is this saying? Whatever. And that's a form of like really rudimentary pattern disruption. There's lots of different other ways doing it with like color and what have you. So yeah, pattern disruption can happen digitally too, and then get you to raise your awareness in your physical world as well. Now let's talk about percolation. So that's pattern disruption in a nutshell. It's going to be used quite a bit on you. Now I would like to make sure I'm gonna say that at the end of this podcast. So we're gonna move on to something else called percolation, which is basically, it's not pattern disruption. It's more associative, but it's kind of like conclusive ambushing. And if you listen to our conclusive ambushing episode, then you know exactly what I'm fucking talking about. Percolation is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of like pattern disruption. Believe it or not, advertisers use this. So if an advertiser, like let's say you're at work and it's like 11 and you're thinking about, oh, it's almost 12. It's going to be lunchtime soon. What do I want to eat today? They're going to start the radio ads are going to start coming up. If you play the radio at work, construction, whatever, for fucking Carl's Jr. or whatever, or fucking, if you come in now, you get a fucking steak dinner between the day, Applebee's between 12 and 3 every day, you know, every weekday. The fucking blue collar special or whatever. And so they'll start to, you know, even though you're not actively listening to the radio, it'll be in the background, and believe it or not, the message will be coming over and over and over and over and over again, and in higher frequency. Probably, you know, they'll run higher frequency of ads before 12 because they understand everyone's about to go to lunch, and it'll be a lot of food advertisers. And probably every 10 minutes instead of 15 to 20 minutes of a music break, will there be a commercial for this food place. And you're subconsciously listening up to it, but it'll be about burgers or what have you. And what they're doing is you already have a library of places you want to eat in your brain, right? You got, or shop. Let's say shop for clothes. Let's quit using eat, making me sound like a fat ass. Shop for clothes. Let's say you need to buy school clothes for your kids, and they know that you're going to go pick up your kids from school, moms, dads, stay-at-home dads. Can't hate. You're going to go pick them up every day at 3. So they're going to play ads for back-to-school clothes at Ross, at Sears, at fucking Macy's, what have you, every day around 3 p.m. because you got to go pick up the fucking kids for 3 p.m. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to raise their awareness. They're trying to percolate your choice because they understand it's a desire. It's they call it back to school season for a reason. So they're trying to percolate their brand to the tip top of, I guess, your awareness. So understand that's a principle that's used on you every day, actively. Now, this is also percolation. Happens in 3 ways. There's direct reference. So direct percolation, so they can get you to directly think about what it is you need to do, or what it is, the brand that would be your solution. There's associative. So let's say back to the food thing. You've eaten a shit ton of Carl's Jr., and maybe, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, and maybe if you're on Spotify, they understand you personally because they can track your location or whatever. Can tell that you've been to that location so many times. What's also going to happen is if you've had something too much, what you'll do is you'll secondary reference something else, but it'll still be in the line. So then if you've had too much Carl's Jr., maybe you'll go to Burger King. Maybe you're going to go to McDonald's instead. So there's associative. So, let's say someone brings up hammer. What's the next thing? Hammer, you're probably going to think wrench or what have you. But that also brings, do you understand? So this is percolation. I'm going to tell you what it's used for in application, but I want to talk about it. I call it percolation. You can talk about it, call it raising brand awareness, whatever, but I'm not talking about it in that application. So basically, percolation is sifting a class of things to the top of your awareness. And I'm going to get straight to the point on this percolation stuff. Believe it or not, I was talking for about 40 minutes and didn't realize my fucking app stopped recording. And so now I'm going to have to go and talk about this shit all over again. Anyways, percolation. Percolation is basically they're raising awareness of something to the top of your list. You've got a million different classes. Think of you have a bunch of different boxes of items, and each box has similar items in it, but they're all different brands. What percolation does is it sifts things to the top, and it can be used. Percolation can be used in pattern breaking to harm a person, and we're going to go into how that's used in application. Basically, there are 3 different kinds of percolation, and your brain is based off association. And what they will do is then bring up certain topics that they know that you have access to those associations currently in your brain. The closer to the surface that they're confident on, the better. So let's say you're thinking about So let's say they want you to start thinking about bananas, and because they put a laced banana on your counter in the middle of the night, and they know you're about to eat breakfast. They know every day you eat something different because you like variety. So they might, start. You start your morning off in the morning. You check your email, and there's something that reminds you about eating fruit, and that's the only fruit in your house. They'll use percolation to try to sift up that association in your brain to make you think, oh yeah, maybe I do want to eat a banana this morning, after they made you eat something that was laced. Percolation also works in associative, meaning like, let's say they find a way to break your pattern of behavior. You're in the middle of doing something, and then they break your pattern by giving you the association of something, but you don't have that available to you. Let's say you probably need a screwdriver. So, but then somebody, instead of saying screwdriver, somebody will say wrench. And maybe you're like, no, I don't need a wrench, but I do have a screwdriver, because that's associative. It goes one over. So whatever they know that you have access in association to that thing, they'll bring up, they'll do it through percolation. And there's also negative percolation, where they will bring up, going back to the hammer thing, let's say they need to disrupt your pattern because maybe they want you to go to a certain store where they have a couple of people there, and they know that they have those radiation devices. Those guys have it on hand, because these contractors and these shitty cops who run these gang stalking and Cointelpro harassment programs love working with organized crime, because they do dirty work that other people won't do. So let's say they know you got to pick up nails on your honey-do list. They'll have somebody walk by you and do what's called indirect conversation. This is all legit. Remember in our last podcast, we talked about, I showed you that clip from the movie called The Corporation, where these marketers were showing that they use the guerrilla marketing technique when a new band comes out with a new album or whatever. They'll have people walking around the city in different groups talking loudly about the band, playing it on their phone or what have you. Maybe they'll have a hot chick or whatever doing it to make you start talking about this band or what have you. I don't know if you remember that from that last podcast, that video podcast we did, that 3-hour long one from the traveling one. We mentioned on that. But they'll pay, I'm saying, if you have some contractors who are getting paid to fucking do this to you, and they start working with local organized crime, they'll start sharing some of their techniques, and now they have double the employees, working with these organized crime people. But then they'll pay somebody to walk by you, and let's say they, like I said, they want you don't have to do it, but they know it's on your to-do list and you're not doing anything important at the moment. They'll break your pattern, have somebody walk past you talking about hammers, And they know that's something because they've been paying attention to you. They got your phone bugged or what have you, that you have to go pick up nails because there's these pictures your wife really wants you to hang up. And the closest place to get that is like a Home Depot, a mile down the street, but they got their guys there and it'll give them a chance to expose you to something or what have you. So there's negative percolation. They'll bring up whatever they know you have access to or what's high on your priority list. Like I said, with the pattern disruption that we just went over. So there's also negative percolation or whatever. And so that's important. And let me give you an extreme example of percolation and using pattern disruption to do something that harms you. So now we were just talking about how these contractors love working with organized crime. Because it's like an extension of their reach. Because you can have some contractors, like maybe 5 to 7 guys hired to do this shit to you. You're not hyper aware yet that you're in that situation. You just notice that your health's getting worse and there's just a lot of bad luck you're having. You don't understand it's being engineered by these people in the background. What these guys usually do is they'll try to get a hold of whoever's running shit in like the underworld in your house, like whatever the organized crime is going on. They'll contact 2 classes of people: the ruling mafia and or cartel, depending on the region of the United States you're in, and local street gang and the local gang that runs shit. They'll find out who that is, usually through trying to figure out. They'll usually do it by trying to buy recreational drugs, and they usually follow that pathway to the person they need to talk to. A shot caller, basically. And they'll have, and what's some people don't understand for organized crime is organized crime loves to have their members working in kind of infrastructure related jobs, whether that be at like a Jiffy Lube or, working at a fucking gym or at a grocery store or at a restaurant, at a pizza place. Usually not like super high up jobs because it keeps them off the radar. But it also there's a way that they can put it on their taxes on how they made so much money. They can just say, oh, I made it working this bullshit job, or I have 2 jobs, or I live with my family. That's why I can afford a fucking Escalade. Is I work this job, but I don't pay rent because I work with my family, whatever. And they usually do shit like that to hide money. But it also organized crime loves infrastructure because it allows them more opportunities over a longer period of time. So your organization is going to sustain itself longer if it has this network of your members working shitty jobs, so they can cheat on their taxes, still make good money, doing jobs, and then also gives them access to a network of people all over town. So when shit happens, they have eyes and ears everywhere. And that especially happens in San Diego, but it's usually the cartel and the local gang that pays the cartel a percentage of their profits for each city. So let me give you an example of how percolation and pattern disruption will be used to harm a target without them realizing it. So let's say you were shopping all day. Right? You're in a store plaza, what have you. You're doing shopping. You haven't eaten in like 4.5, 5 hours. But these contractors that are getting paid to like harass you, maybe you're not aware that these guys are being hired because the U.S. government loves to hire contractors to sweep people under the rug they get paranoid about, because the Pentagon's in the hammer business, so everything looks like a nail. So a problem they can probably solve with like a fucking social worker or priming the target for a little while to have more nationalistic views, and then approaching them with, why we need you not to fucking talk about this thing. You guys are looking to fucking blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, we got a job for you here. Whatever it is. The Pentagon, whenever there's a problem, it's always a nail. It's always a hammer and nail problem. They don't know how to deal with things other than being aggro. And plus it's a real macho culture. It's the, thing, like it's a really constant dick measuring contest between the contractors, intel contractors, and military contractors. It's a very alpha centric culture. And so they also like to do fucked up shit to people because it also, heightens their name or what have you in those circles. So the military, every problem looks like a nail problem or a hammer problem. They're in the hammer business and everything looks like a fucking nail. So let me use this as an example because this can happen to you whether you're aware of your Cointelpro shit or if contractors have just been hired to slowly, fucking sweep you under the rug, making you think that you made these decisions yourselves because the human mind has been hacked. That sounds silly, but it's true. So here's an example, perfect example. Let's say you were shopping for clothes, whether you're under Cointelpro or not, whatever. But it's been like 4 or 5 hours since you had something to eat. And usually that's the human hunger cycle is like 4 to 5 hours. And so you're shopping and they want to break your pattern. They want to get you out of the retail pattern. They want you to ingest a certain amount of toxin because they're going to slowly trying to put you in the ground for whatever reason, whether you're aware that you're under Cointelpro, aware of under government harassment, or you're not aware, which not everyone has situational awareness that they're being targeted by these contractors. This happens all over San Diego, by the way. It's a whole cottage industry. I think I mentioned that already. So let's say you're a target of this abuse, but you also really like LeBron James, right? That's just a thing that you like. It's just a part of your personality. You got a fucking number 6 jersey hanging in your room, and you got like a game room. You got a game ball. You got fucking Space Jam running on repeat in the game room. You love LeBron James. So you have a positive association with the number 6. So how they will disrupt your pattern disruption, is they will, using percolation, pattern disruption, and priming, all three together, is they will, let's say you have the Postmates app on your phone, but you're in a plaza. You're in like a shopping plaza in a strip mall by like a major shopping center. You got lots of food options there, but you're not thinking about eating food. So what they do is they know you already have a positive associations with number 6. So what they'll do is they'll send you a notification on your phone with $6 off for any burger you want to buy off Postmates. But you're in a shopping center. Why would you deliver food? But they've percolated the idea of, well, yeah, it's been a while since I've eaten. I'm probably going to get something to eat after this. They've already now created a positive association with burgers in your brain because they paired it up with the number 6, which you adore since it's LeBron James. So you get the notification. They break your pattern with the notification. You get the endorphin rush thinking it's going to be a message. No, Postmates sent you a notification. Hey, $6 off right now. You order anything that's burgers, but you don't have any burgers. But prior to this, they understood that, hey, this guy's probably going to get something to eat after this. He's in this shopping center. We are friends with the local gang or whatever. Who do you have in the area that is at an eatery? We're about to percolate and prime our target, and we need someone to put some poison in this food. They're like, oh, great. What shopping center is he in? Oh, he's in the one with the Ulta Beauty and the fucking Nordstrom rack, whatever. Oh, perfect. There's a fucking Five Guys right there. Okay, awesome. Burgers, perfect. So then since the contractors have control over his internet, they will send him a notification for $6 off any burger you want to get on the menu for Postmates. He's not going to order Postmates. Why would he? It's a major inconvenience, but he is around a bunch of places. The closest place that he's going to see when he gets out of the Nordstrom rack is the motherfucking Five Guys on the other side of the plaza. He's going to see it. He's already going to eat something probably because that's the way the brain cycle works. And he's already been positively primed with his favorite basketball player, LeBron James, with the number 6. So what's the next option? So with percolation, sifting things to the top, his next option is, well, I don't want that. I don't want Postmates, but I will have Five Guys since I'm already like in a, thinking positive things about burgers right now because they showed me my favorite number and it's my favorite fucking basketball guy. Believe it or not, this is the way the brain fucking works. You make tons of subconscious associative decisions every fucking day. But these contractors will plan this shit out like this. So then they'll make sure that their guy who works at Five Guys has the fucking poison. They're hoping, believe it or not, they're really hoping. About 80% of the time, it always happens, believe it or not. Believe it or not, 80% of the time, I feel like I sound like Brian Fantana from fucking Anchorman. 60% of the time, it works 100% of the time. But basically, yeah, 80% of the time, this associative nudging, subconscious associative nudging for targets like that who aren't aware, or even if you are aware, because what's it called? Hedonic adaptation will balance you out and you'll go to a level where you're not put in higher awareness. That's another story. But so you're going to go into the fucking Five Guys and they're going to put some shit in your food and you're going to get your medicine or the opposite of medicine or whatever it is that they're trying to have you put in your body to fuck you up. And that's how that works all together, daisy chained. So they're going to percolate the idea of burgers and they're going to use association to make you think positively about that category of food. They already know your stomach's going to send a signal to your brain pretty soon since it's been like 4 to 5 hours since you've eaten anything. That's the closest option of that. They've already organized it before they prime the target to eat there. And then that's what happened. And that's how they'll poison a person. And they'll usually do poison in small doses over time to slowly tax your organs or whatever. But they have even farther reach because they've made deals with people in town, with the local, syndicate or what have you. So that's kind of how they use all those things daisy chain together. Now I'm going to talk about one more thing. I think that's how I'm going to close this episode. I'm going to teach you 2 things. Believe it or not, one of the things I learned is how to think about all the military people here. Believe it or not, my father, he was in the Navy in the 80s. That doesn't really matter now, but that's the only reason why my family's here. Unfortunately, he passed when I was a little boy, but I'm here in San Diego. I lived here my whole life. I never really gave mention of it. I knew people who, I grew up with people who worked in law enforcement, military, what have you, but I never really thought about their job, how it worked in San Diego, what have you. And San Diego, if you would think about, San Diego is run by the military the same way, and they have a lot of pull here, and all the local city government, what have you. Just like, Detroit is Detroit Auto City. I imagine GM, what have you, has a lot of pull and city council and things that happen in the city of Detroit and whatever. And, well, San Diego, it's the military community. And if you've previously referenced an older episode where I talk about how, programming a new language into a person, we talk about it quite a few episodes, is they will talk about contractors talk to each other, especially military contractors, people who have like wet work, dirty work, or at least know about that kind of work. There's so many here in San Diego. They'll talk about how far they're willing to go in their, or what kind of jobs they will take, the military contractors, and the same way me and you talk about food. And ever since I made that cinnamon program episode, everyone tends to think that every time you're abused in the government, it's just because the government's experimenting on those pedos. Like, no, there are multiple pools of people that get classified as fuck-withable in the military-industrial complex intelligence community. That's just, the cinnamon program is just one pool of people. There is people who are former military employees, former government employees that the government is paranoid about. They'll start fucking with them. Because believe it or not, this method of fucking with people isn't like universally known. Usually people who are trained in this specific art of Cointelpro practices, like gang stalking, like psychological manipulation, like enhanced torture, are the people who know about these certain things. Because the government's very compartmentalized. You know about IT, you know about fucking munitions, you know about this, you know what I'm saying? So not everybody who works for the government is aware of these things, methodologies, things that can happen to everyone who works in the government. So there's multiple different pools. You can be put on an NSA watch list, and then somebody elevates you to the status of, fuck-withable, and then they'll put you okay, well, this guy, we're going to raise him to a high terror level rating, for whatever categories. And you would have no idea, like the fucking category, the reasons that you can end up on an NSA watch list would astound you. The simplest, basic, stupid shit. You would like owning gold can get you on a watch list. Homeschooling your fucking kids can get you on a watch list. Talking about the book of Revelations on the internet can put you on a watch list. So just understand, like, lots of people can get elevated to the status of getting fucked with. So there's different pools of people that get put through these horrible things, and not a lot of them have context like I was gifted with, which I don't deserve, but people were nice enough because they saw what was going on with me, and they're like, this is fucked up, what's happening to you, let us tell you what the fuck is going on. That also gave me context of all this other shit was going on, yada yada yada. But I would not be here, would not be telling you these things, etc., if it weren't people much smarter than me, much nicer than me, bestowing this information to me, making context of my abuse, and telling me how a lot of other things happen in the military-industrial complex, because it's such a fucking mess. And a lot of these people that were helping me just think it's really gross what's going on. If you're going to think at all about a context for what the military-industrial complex is think less deep state. Not everyone who works for the government is part of the deep state, people working Intel, Pentagon contractors. Think of it more like Star Wars. Like, there's a bunch of talented, smart people, and some people are bad and some people are good. And that's just what it is. There's the good Jedis, the bad Jedis. How's that? Perfect. Is my phone gonna die? Bitch, it better not die. Hold on a second. Let me get this before it dies. God damn. Caught that shit soon. Have to restart this shit all over. We're plugged in. Fuck yeah. Word. Okay. So, yeah, think of it like Star Wars, man. And these people helped me out. They didn't have to fucking help me out. I am not a smart guy. I was given context for my abuse, and then these people had to leave because people were getting fucking killed around here. No bullshit. There really was like this purge because these motherfuckers around here got paranoid because they thought people were talking about shit, and every problem in the military is a hammer and a nail problem. If they get paranoid, instead of looking into it, they just start fucking people up and see where the rats scatter and then they'll make judgment calls. So the Pentagon, every problem is a fucking hammer and nail problem. It shouldn't be that way, and most likely there's a reason why these people fucking told me this shit. So people in the military-industrial complex, contractors, etc., will communicate to each other. If they're talking and they find someone else that works in that space, especially around here, and they'll usually use, believe it or not, organized crime also kind of use the same verbiage. If you go back on one of the episodes we talked about, using this language to speak, a lot of people confuse it with like the fucking Illuminati or whatever. Go back to that episode, listen to that. I don't want to go into too much into that. But let me just give you a little insight into the nomenclature that's used around here for when military contractors, after they've identified each other, they like to talk on the down low, and they'll start talking about diet. And they talk about diet as a substitute of a way of talking about what they're willing to do and what kind of jobs will they take, especially people who are intelligence contractors for field agents and field ops. So how they'll do that is they'll use the subject of food or eating as a transference metaphor for what kind of jobs they're willing to do and the kind of person they are when they're talking to each other. And like I said, they'll use metaphors and layered conversation to communicate ideas with each other. And so think about the types of diets there are. There's like vegetarian, there's people who don't eat red meat, there's people who eat fish, there's people who are on a paleo diet, there's people who are vegetarians, there's people who are vegans. And that's how they communicate to each other what kind of person they are, what kind of jobs they'll do, and how they talk shop out in the open, but it looks like people having a conversation about food and diet or whatever. And so, like I said, there's different pools of people to pull from. And so let's first start with like Cinnamon Program. Cinnamon Program people, what they'll say, how they'll talk to each other is they'll be like, oh, you know what I'm saying? What's your diet like or what have you? And they'll bring that up in conversation. And because it starts with a P, they'll be like, oh, I'm a pescatarian, meaning like they only fuck with people in the Cinnamon Program. And then some people will say, oh, well, I don't eat red meat. And what's it called? CH words, like chicken, whatever. So red meat, they don't eat red meat. So usually that means they'll eat birds, chicken. So if someone says they don't eat red meat, they usually refer to chicken. And like CH words and P words are interchangeable for like child molesters and pedophiles, stuff like that. So that's that pool, Cinnamon Program people. Then there's just people who said, oh, well, I love red meat, meaning they'll communicate, oh, I'll take any job that has to kill somebody. I don't care what it is. I'm okay with killing people to make money. So whether they fall into, military contractors being labeled as, flight risks that they think they're going to disseminate information, whether you got elevated to a list from an NSA watch list, whether you're a brown person and just go to a mosque and somehow someone says, I don't know, he might be a terrorist. He has an uncle in Pakistan who, picked up an AK-47. We're going to put him on this list. So they'll do any job that has to do with killing anybody, whatever. So if someone says they love red meat, that's usually what they're talking about. And it'll be a conversation. It'll look like a normal conversation, but in reality, they're talking about how they fuck with people, what they're willing to do for money, contract work for the government, Pentagon. If they say they're a vegetarian, that means, they don't want to kill people, but they'll do they'll fuck people up. If they say they're a vegan, that means that they don't want to harm people at all. They don't pick up that kind of work, that intelligence work. They're not comfortable with it. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how they'll do that. If also some of the terms are interchangeable. Some people saying that they'll only eat they're a pescatarian, but they love to eat shark, or they love lobster or what have you, and that usually means that they work primarily for the Navy, and they fuck with Navy contractors, people that the Navy puts on a shit list or what have you. If they say they love, I love eating game, like deer, or I'll eat, anything with four legs, whatever. Usually that means they do a lot of Army contracting and they're okay with fucking killing people in that space. You have to see how they use these terms, but that's kind of how they talk about that shit around here. If they say, I love eating duck and chicken and what have you, it doesn't necessarily have to definitely mean, especially if they start specifying other kinds of birds or what have you. There's, pheasant, whatever. If they start going into that, that usually means it's an indicator that they do a lot of Air Force contracting, or they do most of their work with the Air Force, but they're okay with killing people, especially if they start listing things that they're willing to eat. It's like an interchangeable term of what your diet is or what you're willing to do to put food on your table. Do you understand where the transference comes from? So you could be sitting around these people and it looks like they're having a conversation over beers and a fire, just talking about their diet, how they stay in shape, and they're really, after they use like an identifying term to understand, hey, we both work for the State Department, or we both are government contractors or whatever, because there's multiple terms to identify them. There's just at least like 10 ways or so to start identifying, at least on a basic level. They won't share details about their work, but they'll talk shop this way. So yeah, there's people, so there, I think that's a cool little nugget maybe to share with you guys, to give you kind of an insight as to what's being said, what's being discussed. There's also a shit ton of people in the entertainment industry that also work for the military industrial complex. The same way you would think of an industry plant, believe it or not, there is a fuck ton of influencers, etc., that work for the fucking U.S. government. And they use the NSA, etc., to push these people's numbers up, etc., and we'll create almost like industry plant people in that space. So Now that you understand that verbiage, how many podcasts have you listened to? How many videos have you seen on the internet where there's a special guest, special military guest, whether that's the subject or the topic or whatever, and then somehow that gets into conversation. Now go back on all those things that you watched and now watch them talk about diet, and you're most likely talking, they're most likely observing somebody talking about what they're willing to do to put food on the table. And I think that's just like a cool little nugget you can kind of put in your pocket. Um, but the same people who taught me that taught me all this shit. So hopefully you learned a lot about pattern disruption, about fucking percolation, about uh, priming, how that works, and how they use that to convince yourself, to how they use that to shape your behavior. This is besides, creating narratives, dual narratives for two people living the same reality. I mean, there's so many tricks to fuck with a person mentally, and a lot of them have to do with subconsciously, or you know what I'm saying. You put that stuff together. So hopefully this was some good information. I'm sorry this is a longer podcast, but if we're gonna start getting into the enhanced torture shit, the psychological science. Like I said, I'm going to post some articles in the comment sections of some of these in the descriptions, so you have a frame of reference to credible shit. So I'm not full of crap. Credible articles from researchers, etc. Credible sources. So you can study further if you're interested in that stuff. But I think the more the articles deal with, or the podcasts deal with, fucking all these topics that have to deal with psychological science, behavioral science, enhanced torture, using subconscious triggers to convince a person to do things that aren't in their best interest. So it looks like they killed themselves, but in reality, the option was chosen for them, because we need to start looking at people who have untimely deaths, fucking die out of nowhere, people who had certain associations, people that might have been an actor or entertainer or industry plant that got out of hand. Maybe they thought they were talking about shit, or they were flying too close to the fucking sun. Like, these things fucking happen a lot. And, it's become a really toxic culture. And that's how you get a company, that's how you get a country to start thinking that they can be oh fuck, I can't believe I'm gonna use this 50 Cent word. They can be authoritarian. Um, is when they start feeling like, we fucking run all this shit. We control what the fucking people in entertainment do. We've scared them into behaving. You know what I'm saying? We control what people say on the internet, etc. When they start understanding that they control influence from many different flanks, is when you have a country that starts thinking like, you know what we're gonna do next? We're gonna go after the First Amendment. We're gonna fucking start calling anybody who says shit we don't like a fucking spy. We're gonna charge them on the espionage. They're gonna start doing these wacky things because they've cornered all the areas of influence to make sure the people don't know what's going on, but the people that are in high positions in entertainment, high positions in companies or what have you, if they raise those guys' awareness to that they exist, and as long as they don't fucking disrupt all the sheep, all the consumers and shit like that, then that's when they start trying crazy shit, like trying to fucking make the First Amendment illegal, etc. Those are symptoms of a very corrupt government, of a monster that's growing out of control. Even, I think it was fucking Truman. I think it was Truman on the way out warned us about the fucking military industrial complex. And this is what they're talking about. It's less, you can kind of sprinkle deep state in there, but it's more the government's like, we control everything. We fucking scare all the people high up in entertainment. We control everything people say on the internet. You know what I'm saying? we have all this influence here. If people are saying shit we don't like, we just make sure no one can see that shit. We can just, you know what I'm saying? It's a symptom. What's going on now with the Julian Assange, all these horrible things, is a symptom of a government that's scared the people in influential positions, etc. People have a voice high up, entertainment, what have you, people that say things online, whatever. They've cornered the market on the narrative. And now they're getting cocky. And as time goes by, it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And it's important for people to know these things. That's why I'm telling you guys about these things, these tactics, etc. Because that's what they use to suppress people. If somebody has something that they have to say that's going to embarrass the government, that's going to embarrass a prominent politician, what have you, if it's going to put the military's methodologies on blast, the fact that they have these fucking radiation weapons and shit like that, and behavioral techniques and shit like that to fucking kill people on the down low. You can't see it, you can't hear it. It's just going to make them get cancer and die. You're going to think that they're kind of going crazy. We're going to make them look like a nut job on the internet. We're going to harass them here. Like, this is the symptoms of a fucking government that's lost their mind and that it's out of control. And the military industrial complex and a lot of people who have authority positions are fucking getting out of control. And if anything you want to take from today's episode is that these things exist, and they exist on a level you don't understand. It's gone too fucking far. People are afraid to say shit because you can get unalived real fucking quick, and they can just make it look like it just happened or what have you. And it's important to know these things, man. We're getting to a point where the fucking government feels too fucking confident. I mean, for fuck's sake, they're trying to put a man in jail for over 100 years for using his First Amendment rights, and the person who gave him that information is out of jail, streaming on Twitch, playing fucking video games. Believe it or not, Chelsea Manning. But they just feel like they can do anything at this point, and they can get away with it, and they can convince you nothing bad was happening, because not everyone knows about this horrible fucking set of skills that was learned under the Cointelpro program that is used in applications in many ways, not just on people who are getting the shit into the stick like me, also on the general public, etc. People in entertainment, people high up in Fortune 500 companies. People have the money to say something loud, but they'll scare them to make sure they never fucking attempt it. It's really just disgusting. The more I think about it, I feel fucking gross. I hope this is a good eye-opening experience. I hope you fucking learned a whole bunch. Like I said, I am not a smart person. I was blessed with muses, and they are the smart people. I am just, you know what I'm saying? They taught me the sheet music. I'm just playing the piano. But in no way am I somebody special. I'm just a regular, average fucking dude. Anyways, thanks for listening today. Please check out the website. That's Cointelpro, the number 2, and then 0 spelled out zero.com. You can check out our podcast series at podcasts with an S, podcasts.cointelpro, the number 2, 0 zero.com. Video series is videos with an S, videos.cointelpro, the number 2, and then 0 spelled out zero.com. And always hit us up on Twitter on our Mesh News account, which is Mesh Megaphone, MESH Megaphone, and then Mesh Newsroom is the profile we keep nice and clean. We only upload videos to. That's our content channel. Currently on December 20th, 2021, I am redoing our website. So if you're going to the Mesh News website, please excuse our dust. Like I said, making a website on a phone is hard as fuck. It's balls. Sorry. It's hard as balls. So please excuse our dust. Hopefully we'll be done before the end of the month. I just felt like the website needed to be a little more accessible and make it easier for me to update via a phone. So I'm trying to implement some things on there that makes it so I upload things to our social feeds and it populates the website automatically, because it's a nightmare. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your attention. I don't deserve it. and I'll talk to you next time.
Yep.